Hey guys, Dan Waters, Academic Developer Evangelist here to give you a walkthrough of the Windows Phone 7 plus Windows Azure plus SQL Azure plus WCF plus push notifications blog post series that I just finished up. We're just going to take an in-depth look at the code, not too in-depth, but at least showing you the most important parts. So I started off by creating this Azure Stock Alert service, which I did just by going to File, New, Project, and choosing Cloud under .NET Framework 4, of course, and choosing Windows Azure project. I basically added a web role and a worker role. The web role is actually this push-reg service. It's actually a WCF service role. So we ended up with this project here. And the purpose of this is so that you can call the service with some information like username and password, and it will input that information into the SQL Azure database. So if we look at the operation contract, for example, we have a couple of methods here, and then here's the user data, which corresponds directly to the SQL Azure data. So really straightforward. When you look at the actual code itself, if we look at the register for push code, it takes in username, keywords, password, hash, and push notification URI. It creates our data model here. And what this does is allow us to check whether or not the user exists. And if it doesn't exist, then we add a new user with these settings that were passed in. Otherwise, we try to log in and then update those settings. So all this does is just get the information into the database. That's it. And that's all done through this users.edmx in the utilities project, which is a separate class library, so it can be shared between the registration service and the Azure worker role. And this comes straight out of SQL Azure. It's an entity framework, entity data model. Also in the utilities class is this little push notification library. And this is taken directly from the push notification example, which is freely available on the App Hub. So basically what this is, it just gives us ways to send things like toast notifications. It sets up the XML for us and everything. So I didn't write any of this code. This is all straight off of the App Hub sample right here. So I just thought I would reuse that. Now the stock monitor project is the Azure worker role. So this is the thing that's working all the time. Basically we go to the run method here. This is what's happening all the time. And whenever you do trace.writeLine in a worker role, you're basically giving yourself the ability to see what's happening. So if you open up the console, you'll be able to see what's going on there. You can optionally, sleep it a little bit if you don't want to run all the time. I just want to do it every 2 minutes just so that it's easy for me to see. And but you also get the semblance of time passing as well. And what this is doing is looking for users in the database where they want push notifications, and then identifying a quote to send to the user, and then sending it via push notification. So let's look at these methods. The get quote to push for user. This gives us access to the various quotes that they've set up that they want to look at. This is the Yahoo quotes service, and these are kind of the format characters, so depending on what you put here, that impacts what you get back in the comma-separated list of things that, that Yahoo gives you. And we just open up a web client, we go read that URL, and then we read everything out of it. And once we've got it all parsed, we just add it to this list of quotes. I have this class here called quote that I use, which is just basically a struct more than anything else. And then I just get back the quote that had the highest percent change. So pretty simple there. And then when it comes to actually pushing the quote, we instantiate a push notification sender, set the message, trace a bunch of stuff so we can see what's going on, and then send a toast notification to the user's push notification URI. So that's what's happening in the Azure worker role. Then the last thing to look at is the Windows Phone 7 application. We have this page called mainpage.xaml, which is basically a really simple pivot application. Doesn't really do anything other than do the actual registration. So there's another pivot in there for what you might build out of this application, where you'd be able to have a UI for looking at all your stocks and stuff. But all we've got right here is just these 4 fields and then a button. And when you click that button, it runs this code right here. So this user service client is actually a service reference over here under service references that we've added to our WCF web role. So that is basically a proxy class that allows us to work with this endpoint here. So once these methods have completed, then we have these callbacks or these event handlers that get called. But it's pretty simple. We're basically saying if the user said that they wanted to use push notifications, then we are going to call the register for push asynchronous method here to actually get them into the database. Then once that's done, we just show a simple dialog box with the results of that. And then we have a password hashing algorithm right here which uses SHA-1. And then this is actually probably one of the more important parts of this code right here. This is the get push notification URI. And this is what we actually call this method when the page is loaded, because we want to have the push notification URI on hand. But you set a channel name, and this is sort of unique to your application. And we then create an HTTP notification channel. We try to find one with an existing channel name. Otherwise, we create a new one with that channel name. And then once the channel URI has been updated by the service, then we're able to set it to the value of the channel URI. So we have to have this in place before we can actually register with the database, because if we don't have the push notification URI, then when Windows Azure tries to fire it off to the Microsoft push notification service, it won't know what URI to give to that service, so then the service in turn will not have any way of communicating back to the device. But that's basically how everything works. This code here is really important, and of course it's available on the blog post, so it's quite easy to get. So we covered the Windows Phone 7 application itself. We covered the WCF service, which is responsible for getting users into the database. We covered the stock monitor, which is the worker role that is going out and talking to the Yahoo stock service. And we covered the utilities class, which has some push notification stuff in there for sending push notifications, as well as the entity framework model. And that will do it. So I hope that this was a helpful and productive session. Go out there and build some great Windows Phone 7 applications that use push notifications.